Mike here with that'sgoodenougghforme.com. We're doing our Who Zoomin Who series. I'm here with Steve Rawles from Belvedere.
Hello.
Very excited. How are you doing today?
Awesome. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm great. Just another day and another Zoom. So full disclosure, Belvedere was off my radar forever and ever and ever. And I know that Spotify gets a kind of a bad rap. I mean, I shit on Spotify this last New Year's and said, I'm moving to Tidal. Spotify's evil. But I wouldn't have found out about your band if it wasn't for Spotify Radio.
Cool.
And I'll never forget a song from Revenge of the Fifth came on, like while I was doing computer programming and dozing out. And it hit hard enough to knock me out of my chair and make me listen to a new band, which is kind of rare for like a grumpy old guy.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan. I wanted to kick things out right away by talking about Elephant March and Good Grief Retreat, the two songs that you've released for a proposed new album, I'm hoping.
Yes. Full length coming out May 14th.
May 14th. Cool. Now those songs are great. Just fantastic songs. Once again, kicked me out of my chair from the beginning. Elephant March has some very good political themes to it, along with some shredding. I kind of wanted you to elaborate about what this song's about.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of the record is, as we've all kind of had the year to sit at home or wherever you are and try to figure things out. I think a lot of the album sort of deals with, the wealth gap is a big one for me. The small group of people that are doing infinitely better than most of us. And, so there is some swipes there. Elephant March is about control and how we are sort of being manipulated by the ruling class. And, there's a lot of just sort of, some of it's direct. There's a lot of poetry involved there. There is sometimes a collection of ideas, but that's sort of the underlying theme for the album and in that song as well.
Great. Well, yeah, big fan of it. The riffs on it are just, it's church. It's like fucking, it's like 80, it almost borders on like 80s hair metal level fun with single leads and stuff like that. Your percussion section, or your bass and rhythm section following along with a lot of intricacies. So moving on to Good Grief Retreat. You couldn't do it Belvedere, sneak peek without getting into some rapid fire double time drums, which I was a big fan of. So I think when I heard those songs, I think I immediately found Casey's Facebook and was just like, hey, you're really good.
Yeah. That's nice of you to say. He likes hearing that. He's pretty quick.
Now he's been with you. He's been with you since the band's return in 2011, 2013.
No, he came in 2000, I want to say 14 or 15. But yeah, a few years into that. Yeah. We, it was kind of time for a change. Graham, who also I play in This Is a Standoff, there was just, as it happens with most of these guys, family and touring don't always mix. And so it was a good time to sort of move on. And, also Casey lived in Calgary here and we knew him and he filled in for a Japan tour. And that was kind of the transition to where he became our drummer. So Casey's on Revenge of the Fifth, and now this new record, Hindsight, is the Sixth Sense coming out.
That's great. I definitely wanted to touch on that. We got Jordy from Propaganda, and then Casey's killer. What's up with the Canadian drummers, man?
Yeah, George's great. He's a drummer I've listened to since I started getting into punk, and it's these older guys, you kind of think they're going to lose their step, but there's a few special guys like George that I think he just excels as he gets older. He probably doesn't feel like that after a show every day at his age, but I think there's something really special on record and live watching those guys. I love watching him play, and I Casey has always kind of been the Calgary drummer as far as the punk scene goes. This is going back 25 years. He's been kind of the number one guy in Calgary for punk drumming, and so it was an easy one to transition to. I don't look back too often when we play, which is really great.
Yeah, that's always a good thing for a guitar player to say. So
yeah, I just follow the snare, and I know he's doing good stuff behind me. So
Now Elephant March is going to be the 6th LP in the history of the band, which is exciting. You said it's coming out in May.
Yeah, Hindsight is the Sixth Sense is the album, and it's coming out May 14th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, to go back to Revenge of the Fifth, again, telling you how I discovered your band just by randomly hearing a song from that. I wanted to talk about the production, the writing of that album, especially this was your first album back, after a long hiatus.
Yeah.
Countless great songs on that. I can't find one to choose to be a favorite, but I'm always pleased when one of them comes on. Do you want to kind of talk about how that, I guess, one, how you brought the band back together, and two, what, resulted in the creation of Revenge of the Fifth?
Yeah, so we came back in 2012, and we were just going to do a series of reunion shows. We had some stuff with Less Than Jake down in Brazil. We did a couple festivals in Europe, and then we had about a week's worth of headlining shows in Canada. Things went really well, and we were playing, venues and selling out some venues that were bigger than anything we had done before. So, we thought, not only were we having fun, but things were going really good, and so we kind of continued on. And after a couple of years, it became apparent that if we wanted to keep doing this stuff, we had to put out some new music. And I kind of liked it because it was our chance to sort of prove that we could actually come up with something decent again. And we're just kind of, riding this nostalgia train from the early 2000s. So, everybody started writing some things. Jay and Scott took a real lead in the music at the time. And I went at it with the lyrics and singing, phrasing and stuff like that. So, it got pieced together over about a year and a half, and we tracked it at Casey's studio, Echo Base Studio in Calgary, and then we mixed it at the Blasting Room in Colorado. And, we're really happy with it. It turned out good, and it did good. The thing is that we couldn't tour it that much. So, because of other schedules, we could only maybe play, 20 shows a year. And that really weighed on us, those of us that wanted to do a bit more. So we had a little switch on members. A couple of guys just didn't want to do it anymore about a year and a half ago after a tour with Satanic Surfers in Canada. And Casey and I just said, listen, we want to keep rolling here. So we found two guys, one that lives in Calgary, Dan, and one, Ryan, who lives in Toronto now, but he's from Calgary originally. And a couple of new shredders, and they're stoked to tour. So we were gearing up to do about 100 shows last year. And then with things falling through now, we're just kind of slowly piecing things together, hopefully for the end of this year, beginning of next year. But yeah, I mean, as far as Revenge of the Fifth, just kind of came together with just jamming at our studio, and you got what you got.
That's great. It's fantastic. I'd recommend it to anybody.
Thanks.
There's a lot of propaganda influence. Wilhelm scream, I hear a bit in there, but it's done in a very, very unique way. That I think is really special.
Thanks.
You're welcome. This is one of the first circumstances where I'm talking to an artist that has a new album ready to go, as the world is kind of looking more positive. I got to talk to Less Than Jake right before Silver Linings came out.
Cool.
And it's, it's cool seeing that momentum, that release date. Obviously it's kind of a bummer without a big release show. And I'm assuming you guys aren't going to be able to do anything quite like that in May. But it's, I think that's more of a positive projection. The majority of the interviews that I did in the last year were bands like Pears that put out a record and immediately went back home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to take things back a little bit, I wanted to talk, and you can talk about this as a standoff too. I just wanted to talk about the extensive levels of touring. My daughter turned 4 on Tuesday. So I'm one of those people that if my old project started trying to tour again, I could hang for 30 days and then I'd probably go back home too. I think if you're not a musician, it's easy to see a band of friends start to kind of break up a little bit and replace members and be like, those assholes, they quit. It's no, life is a real fucking thing. But let's hear about life on the road a little bit. And I want to hear about this as a standoff too, because it also was off my radar.
Cool. Well, I mean, I'm like, I've got a 5-year-old, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm with, a wonderful woman who is very, she's totally into what I do. And so she wants me to get out there as much as I can. And I have a kid that has been to Europe and seen us play festivals. And as he gets older, I'd like to be able to introduce him, to this stuff a little bit more. So, life on the road is different than it was when we were in our 20s. When we toured the States a lot, it was a lot of basement shows. It was a lot of sleeping on floors or in the van, whoever would give us free beer, we did that for weeks, for months at a time. We did a 100-day tour in the States and Canada straight. Like, my friends were going to college in September, and we came home for like Christmas break. Like, so thankfully we only ever did that once, and that changed us, I think, forever. You don't come back the same after that, especially when you're playing in front of 20 people every night. But so we slogged it out a lot in the 90s, and so things are different now. I mean, the band is doing better, and we're playing good shows and tours and festivals and stuff, and so it's a lot easier. We're doing okay. We feel really lucky when we get on these bigger festivals and touring with some of the big ones in the genre. It means a lot. So, as far as touring now, it's we're just kind of waiting. We have 3 Europe tours we have to make up, a lot of festivals we got to make up. We had some Canada stuff. We're probably supposed to do some Japan and maybe Australia. And then if things go well here for 2022, we're going to try and take a shot at going back down to the States again. Because like I said, it's been 17 years probably since Belvedere toured the States. So we're due, and we get people writing us all the time asking us to come down. And we just got to figure out the visa stuff and all that, because that's always a pain in the ass to tour down there. So.
Oh, for sure.
Once you get down there, it's great. The shows are great, but it's the visas and the cost. It's a lot of money, and it's a lot of things to, get contracts in 3-4 months or whatever the hell it is, just very unrealistic things for punk bands to get their shit together. So we'll get there.
Yeah, and the other side to that is I have friends that can't go to Canada because they got too many DUIs here in the States and stuff like that. So I think it was leftover crack got stopped at the border of Canada, and they were like, one of you is allowed in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a booking agent as well, so I book a lot of bands, and so you get used to that dance. I don't know. There's not, there's a lot of bands that have, certain members that can't make it, but whether it's they have to switch up people or something like that, or you have to get a pardon from the Minister of Defense, which is not cheap in Canada. There's ways to get bands in. I don't seem to have any problem going to Europe, but I mean, here we've got rules. I don't know. So, but yeah, it can be a bit tricky.
Well, if any neighboring country wants to point their nose at my country right now, after the fucking bullshit that we've been up to for the last 4 years, go for it. We deserve it. Let's talk about this as a standoff.
Sure.
I want you to describe this project for me as somebody that's going to listen to it when I get off the call with you.
Awesome. So Belvedere split up in 05, and about a year later I started this as a standoff, and we were just going to do a little fun thing here and there. Ended up being a full-time thing as well. We went to Europe 7 times. We went to Japan. We put out 3 records. It's in the same kind of vein as Belvedere, probably a little more poppy, maybe a little more sing-songy. Not as definitely guitar riffy, but a different kind of guitar riffy. So it's interesting to me because there's definitely people that like both bands, that are fans of both bands, but there's people that just like Standoff, or just people that like this, Belvedere. And they came at different times. Like Belvedere started in 95. And so we were still dealing with, sending out tapes and demo tapes physically to promoters, and there wasn't the internet. There was the internet, but like I think I sent an email for the first time in 1995 in college, So by the time Standoff came around, there was MySpace, and we were kind of we use MySpace a lot to book our shows and stuff. So we have kind of this crowd that's maybe 7 to 10 years younger than Belvedere, because we kind of cut our teeth and really worked at shows in Europe and played in front of a lot of new people, where I think maybe the older brothers and sisters were listening to Belvedere.
That's great. No, and I get that. Yeah, as I'll never forget my bass player in my band in 2004. We were booking tours by harassing people on Pure Volume, I think was at that point.
Yeah.
And My bass player, we lived together, and he was in the basement kind of snickering. And he's like, there's this thing called MySpace, and I'm adding these like supermodels. Like, I don't even think they're real. I realized to this day, like, if we would have jumped on and started using it to promote our band at that moment, then maybe we would have had a much easier shot. Instead, I was like, well, I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to work on our pure volume, which is like actually important.
Yeah,
you go on pure volume now, there's like nothing there.
Well,
can't even like, play the music.
Especially like when I was booking stuff overseas, I was a real MSN Messenger guy. So like even some of my best friends now that are in bands, we were kids just shooting the shit on MSN Messenger. And, you know, like this, one of my buddies, Bjorn, from a band called 5 Days Off in Belgium, he's now like a pretty good size agent over there and books like kind of indie rock bands. But at the time, he was really reaching out and trying to get his band 5 Days Off out. And so we were kind of connecting a lot. And I remember when we went to Europe the first time, Satanic Surfers brought us over for 8 shows. And we ended up booking a couple of shows in Switzerland with No Use for a Name and Pulley. And that's where I met the Pulley guys. But then we built this whole like month tour in Europe all around these shows with Bjorn, and, you know, rented a car and borrowed a backline every night, and like, you know, threw a couple of bags of merch in the back. And like, we were in this like equivalent of a station wagon in Europe, and that's how we did our first tour. So it was all because of MSN Messenger.
Yeah, no, and come to think of it, Book Your Own Fucking Life, like the last paper copies of that I saw in very early thousands. Yeah, bands are putting their ICQ numbers on it. They're putting their AOL Messenger.
That's how I booked the States in the 90s was because I was always getting Maximum Rock and Roll. So I would get Book Your Own Fucking Life on the print copy, and then when it went to byofl.org, then I, you know, in the late 90s, then I started continually booking there. But I sent out so many press packages, or whatever you call them, like demos, and I'd send them out 3 or 4 months in advance, a tape with a letter, handwritten letter, and then my phone number, and I'd call them afterwards. Hey, did you get the thing? No, you didn't get shit. It's been 4 weeks. Okay, I'll send you another one. And then, like, you know, you show up in Merced, California, and like, who are you? Like, well, I think we're supposed to play tonight. Like, yeah, it was a different time for sure. But we pieced together a lot of small tours like that was from those resources.
Yeah, now that you're describing it that way, I could get on Instagram and find out that a venue's closed before I go there, and find out that my show isn't happening because the venue closed. If I did today, remember, like, and like, you know, most of the, you know, the States was pretty easy to tour as far as like, where are we going? You know, you get into a town, you get an address, you figure it out. I remember when we toured Europe before GPS, or before we got, someone had GPS, we didn't. But that first tour over there was like, we would dedicate an hour. So it's like, oh, it's 4 hours from, you know, 3.5 hours from Berlin to Hamburg. Okay, cool. We're going to take 5 hours, which will help us with some traffic. But then also when we get there, we're just going to go straight for the middle of Hamburg. And then we're going to start asking questions. Where is this venue? Because, you know, they give you printouts and stuff, but like for the most part, you know, you can't follow like GPS. Like I remember the first time we went over there with Standoff, we had GPS. I'm like, this is why Belvedere broke up. If we had GPS, we wouldn't have broken up. Yeah, so we printed MapQuest directions.
Yeah.
Night before the tour, we'd staple them together at Kinko's, you know, with the big ass stapler.
Yeah.
And then we'd set it on the dash. And then the first day of tour, our guitar player would like spill an entire beer on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, Old Man Yells at Cloud aside, like, nobody has any idea how fucking difficult it used to be to get like 4 punk dudes that are trying to be cool to like, be responsible enough and attentive enough to get to a concert venue on time in a city they've never been to with a piece of paper. So,
and even, you know, even getting into Europe the first time, by the time we got to Europe, it was 01 or 02. They had the euro by that point. So can you imagine before then having to, okay, we're, you know, juggling 10 different currencies, losing every time you exchange it, right? Like, you know, for small bands, it's like, okay, well, we're in Italy, we've got the lira, we're in France, we got the francs, we got the German Deutschmarks. Like, it's just, I couldn't handle it. I already hate dealing with a Swiss franc, a euro, and a UK. I'm already like, you know, how do I dish this out, you know? And that's enough for me. I couldn't imagine doing, you know, 10 or 12 different currencies. So things are easier for sure in lots of different respects.
Except right now, because we can't play.
Except right now, we can't play.
You know, that's fascinating, and dates both of us, I think, dramatically.
Yeah.
But interesting, I think. Now, kind of on that same idea, I wanted to talk about the production value on the most recent now two, including the new album, Belvedere Records. When you started the band in '95, obviously recording quality was low. It was expensive.
Yeah.
And, you were dealing with, 18 tracks, 24 tracks at a time versus, now, especially a band like Belvedere that wants to, show off as much as you guys can. I wanted to talk about the difference in production value, recording studios, how that process all works.
Yeah. So the first, I had a label. I started a label in '94, and so I was putting small budgets together for bands and putting out albums for them. Belvedere started a year later in '95, and our first sort of record, first full length record, was Because No One Stopped Us, and that came out in '97 or '98. And what we did is we did that on a friend of mine he was a recording engineer in Vancouver, and he had a 1-inch tape machine. It was 8 tracks. And so that's what we used at the time to record the first album. And so what we did is, by the time you get to the background harmonies, you're out of tracks, right? So, we had to really plan everything ahead of time. We mixed the drums down to 2 tracks. Then it was bass, couple guitars, a lead, and then a lead vocal. And then, so we still wanted to do the 3-part harmony. So we just did it like they did back in the day. We sat 3 or 4 of us around a mic and we did, live with no editing, just 3-part harmonies. And so good or bad, some of them are okay, that's how we did it. And so it's interesting because that record doesn't sound that good, but when I go back and I tell people how we did it, they're like, that's pretty cool. And that's some fun recording magic. Cause I always loved growing up, learning about not only the records like the Beach Boys records and Beatles and stuff like that, but I loved hearing those little magic stories, well, we didn't have reverb, we made our own reverb, this is where the hand clap is, but if you clap into a microphone, it sounds like garbage, so you clap it up against a glass wall, and then the reflection sounds way better in the mic. And I loved hearing all these little cool things. So I look at that first record as being kind of an endearing thing. So it wasn't until our next record, Angels of My Town, that we went into a proper studio, and at that time it was 24 track. That was kind of the big thing. But again, that was on 2-inch tape. And as we've progressed along, we've spent less money on tape and we've spent more time in the studio.
Yeah, for sure. I did a record on tape where I gave the engineer an electronic track that we were going to play along with. Mm-hmm. And then I remember I showed up to the studio early and he was in Pro Tools, slicing little holes in the digital track. Yeah. I was like, what the hell are you doing? He's like, oh, I have to shred it like this. Yeah. Because it has to be a little slower, right, to fit with the tape, which was blew my mind as a child. So
yeah, the last record that I did on tape was Fast Forward Eats the Tape, and that came out in '04. And, not only just the whole idea of slicing tape and stuff, but the nuance of hitting that, the engineer, he came in from Vancouver and we were recording in Calgary. So it took him a few hours to kind of get it, because when you hit a record or play, there's a little bit of latency on that, right? Well, you need to know the sweet spot. You need to know exactly when to punch in, because you're punching in guitars. You're not just play along and then I'll just close it all in around it. It's, you punch in, you punch out, right? So there's a certain magic and a real skill to this guy. He wasn't just an engineer. I mean, there was some real art for him there to be able to hit the punches at the right point, And so a lot of that is quite live, and surprisingly, a lot of our stuff is still fairly live.
Good. Yeah. So let's take the 4 of you guys sitting around as the solo on Elephant March is fucking breaking in. Are you the one that plays the solos in the band, or is it the other guy?
Fuck no. No, I'm the singer and the rhythm guy.
Okay. So between Casey's ping ride craziness,
yeah,
and the solo itself, that's the moment of the song where, and I'm working from home, so I got one AirPod in,
yeah,
and then I have Paw Patrol coming in my other ear right here.
I know that vibe.
That was one of those moments where my daughter's talking to me and I'm like, putting the other, I have to fucking listen to this song right now. It's a very good job. You said Casey does engineering. Does he have his own studio or anything that you
He does, yeah. It's called Echo Base Studio, and so Casey's done thousands of sessions. He's been recording for over 20 years now, and Echo Base Studio was in another location in a basement with like 7-foot ceilings, and they've moved into a garage with but it's got a pitched roof. I think it's 13 or 14 feet. And he's got a really nice live room there and a separate console, and he's everything's Pro Tool HD, and he's got all the gear and everything, and every year just kind of just adds to it. So yeah, he's a that's what he does for his work, is he's an engineer. So
you can tell. Yeah, you can tell, and you can tell that he put his heart into it because it was his own as well. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, he goes above and beyond. He was in there for well over a month, and we went in at separate points throughout it. But he was the guy that he was calling the shots, and then I go in there and we sort of produce my vocals together, and him and I sort of have the final decision on things, and then I went in for 2 weeks and we mixed it.
Cool. Well, what is the plan for the release? You said it's May 14th. Do you have any sort of online promotion or anything that you're going to be doing?
I don't know. We did a streaming show out of Quebec there over the summertime, and it was super fun, but it's just the logistics of all this. Like I say, our bass player lives in Toronto. We're all out here. And given that, everything changes on a dime, as far as things getting locked down and things, it was tough enough to do the recording. Ryan actually was supposed to come out here in December and record his bass parts. We've never had a lockdown, but there was restrictions that made it so he couldn't stay with people. And we were a little unsure about the whole studio thing. So he ended up recording from his apartment in Toronto through a DI, and then Casey sort of reamped everything and took care of it at the studio. So but yeah, anyways, to get back to it, we're not really sure. I know that we've sort of got some dates set aside in July, that because we've had the distance thing before here, we're thinking that might go that way. So we might just do we'll go to a sort of the normal sort of 200-300 cap room that we'll play, but we'll do it in front of 50 or 60 people, and maybe do a couple of days in Calgary and maybe Edmonton, and that'll probably be it. And then we're kind of hoping to see how the fall goes, whether we can do real shows again. But I've got a lot of Europe stuff and Eastern Canada stuff to make up. So once we get going, I mean, after a year, we're just like, what's a few more months? The record's coming out, people are excited. We'll get to playing with, and if it's out there for 6 months before we can really get playing, then that's okay. Then people will know the words.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a positive way to put it too. I know that we're all eager to see live music again, but it's got to be under, safe circumstances.
Yeah. And I mean, I look at it this way, as far as this last year was tough because we had to cancel a lot of shows, but at the same time, we wouldn't have wrote this record or recorded this record. So I try to find a lot of positive stuff where I can. I got to spend a whole year with my kid that I probably normally wouldn't have been able to. So, and with him being in kindergarten, it's such a great year to be there, as a dad. So I try to look at the positives, because like I say, I am a booking agent, so I'm booking 20 bands. So I didn't just cancel 100 Belvedere shows. I canceled 300 shows from all these other bands, Useless ID, Much the Same, Chaser, that I book in Europe or, Canada or whatever. And so, yeah, I mean, I had a Satanic Surfers and No Fun at All tour planned for Canada in June, and that's going to get pushed till next year as well. So yeah, you just try to find the positives in everything. I mean, that's really all you can do. You can't just get, I've had bad moments, and I'm tired of the bad moments. I just want to have a good time and look forward to good things.
Yeah, it's well put. So let's hear the name of the record one more time, since apparently I'm never going to remember it.
It's called Hindsight is the Sixth Sense.
May 14th. Cool.
That's right.
And I wanted to thank you, Steve, for giving me the time today. It was nice to meet you, and I hope you have a good rest of your night.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me. We'll get down to Nebraska soon.